اشرقت نفسي بنور من فؤادي حينما رددت يا رب العباد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. So as usual, inshallah, we will start with some quiz questions just to remind ourselves of what we have covered so far. Okay. So last time I asked you about the three religions that were in Makkah and how they entered Makkah. So today I want you to tell me, and we stopped at the year in which the Prophet ﷺ was born. So he was born in Amul Fil, the year of the elephant. And at that time, like I said, things were not documented and recorded like they are today. So people would remember events according to, major events that have happened at that time. So who agreed, actually let's go back to, who was the first person who sort of took care of the Prophet ﷺ after his mother died? Do you know how old he was? He was 6, yes. When his mother died, he was 6. And his father died before he was even born. Yeah. So the first person who took care of him, somebody said Baraka? Okay, so is that another name for Ayman? Yeah, okay. So Ayman is the one who first sort of looked after him. And she was quite young because, when he passed away, he was 63 and she was in her mid-70s at that time. So she must have been a young teenager when she took care of him. I mean, she must have been 13, 14? Maybe 15 at the most. But she did not nurse him, but she just sort of, she was a nanny. She sort of looked after him. As far as I know, she did not breastfeed him.
She was a slave.
Yeah. And there was also another woman, her name was Thuwayba, and she's another person, but she nursed him. She actually gave him milk, and she was the slave of Abu Lahab. Yeah. And he freed her. It seems like he freed her when he heard the news of the birth of the Prophet ﷺ, because at that time there was no Islam. So he was really happy to hear that Muhammad has been born, and out of happiness he had freed her. Abu Lahab, yeah. And Thuwayba was the slave of Abu Lahab. Yeah, and then she was freed, and then she was one of the first, women who gave milk to the Prophet ﷺ. And everyone who would take the Prophet ﷺ and nurse him, when I say nurse him, I don't mean like nanny, I mean like breastfeed him. They all say that their breasts would fill up with milk, and he would drink to his fill. And for those of us who have nursed babies, it's tough having a breast full of milk. As soon as you hold a baby, to have, you're usually like trying your best, to eat the right things so that you're making enough milk to nurse the baby. So these women, they say that as soon as they would pick up the baby, they would have milk. So who was the first officially, you could say, the woman who sort of took care of him for the next few years? Yes, Halima as-Sa'diyah. So, she was the first person to take him into her care. And as you know, these women, they would come from the desert, and they would, try to take a baby from a wealthy family, because they would get paid for this job. It was not something they were doing for free. So nobody wanted an orphan, nobody wanted a poor man's baby, because they knew there's very little money in that. They're all coming for financial, economical reasons. They're not coming because they have a lot of milk and they want to share it with the baby or something like that. Okay, they need money. And
nursing was a financial.
Yes, exactly. It was a financial gain, and alhamdulillah, the way Allah has, the system of Allah is that as much as you nurse, that's how much milk you will make. So if you have 8 babies, you will have milk enough for 8 babies. That's how your body works. And that's why, for example, if you start giving babies bottle feed, the mother's milk starts to go down because there's not enough sucking. So as much as the baby sucks, that's how much your body will make. So if you think about it, it's a very clever trade, because you can have 2-3 babies extra who you're nursing and getting paid for, and your body will make that amount of milk. And I think it was Thuwayba who nursed Hamza radiallahu anhu as well, which is why Hamza radiallahu anhu was not only the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ, but he was also his milk brother. And so, there was some issues with intermarriages and all that, because you have to be careful of, that issue as well. Anyway, so how long did Sadia keep the Prophet ﷺ?
2 years.
Very good, yes. She kept him for 2 years. And she loved him, and she was amazed at the barakah and the blessings that their family enjoyed during the time the Prophet ﷺ was with them. Because when they went back to their... why did people like to send their babies to the desert? I mean, why are you paying somebody else money to nurse the baby and take him into the desert?
Because desert life.
Yes, because desert life was pure. You know what we are running after today? Organic, right? It was organic, and it was. It made you tough. It developed your character, your personality. You wouldn't be a wimp, right? Yeah, and the language was pure. So there was many advantages. So that's why they were very eager to send their babies there for their initial years. When your immune system is developing and all of that, the best place for them was that place. And so when they went back, only Halima Saadiya's goats would come back full. Everybody else's goats would come back hungry. They would go to graze and they would come back hungry. And so then the people said, send your goats to the same grazing ground where Halima is sending her goats. So they tried to do that. And Halima's goats would come back full and their goats would come back hungry. This was, and like Halima's husband said to her, he said that, you have definitely got a very blessed child. They did not understand where this is coming from, but they just knew that it was amazing. Their life had changed. Even the donkey on which she had ridden to the place where she picked up the baby, when they were coming back, the people were asking her, they said that, Halima, is this the same donkey that you rode on? And she said yes. They said that he's completely transformed, he's like running. He couldn't even walk on the way here. So what's going on? So, okay. Now, what is the event that happened that caused her to return? Because she went at the end of 2 years to Amina, and she said to her, that the 2 years are finished now, and I'm meant to give the baby back to you, but I don't want to. So if you allow me, I will keep him for another 6 months. And then within the next month, she brought him back and she gave him back. Yes, so that's right. So basically, Halima obviously had her own children as well. And they went running to her one day and they said, the Quraysh boy, or the boy of the Quraysh, something's happened to him. They used to call him, the Quraysh boy, or the boy of the Quraysh. So they went running because, like I said, she really, really loved him. She genuinely loved him. She wasn't just, although she brought him to get some money out of this, but she eventually, ended up loving him a lot. And so she went running and she saw him lying on the floor and he was very pale. And her son said to her that there were 2 men dressed in white clothes who came down. They cut open what they called his stomach, because they opened his chest. And he didn't understand what had happened. He said they took something out and then they closed his chest. And so he was found lying on the floor. And so she got worried. She thought maybe this is some jinn or devils or shayateen or someone is messing around with him. So she was worried and she didn't want anything to happen to him, especially not under her care. So she took him back. And she gave him back to Amina. And Amina obviously questioned her and she said to her that she didn't want to tell her what had happened, but then eventually she said, I'm just worried about him. So she said, don't worry, because she said his birth was amazing, my pregnancy was light, and she said it was just, everything was different. She said that this child is very special, so nothing will happen to him. Anyway, okay. What was one of the first jobs that the Prophet ﷺ did? Very good. He was a shepherd, as were almost all the other Anbiya. Can you tell me any 3 qualities that a person learns from being a shepherd? Have you guys been discussing this?
You came late, you know.
Okay.
We have discussed 3 questions already. And this one.
No wonder everybody is so well informed today.
The most she has not asked this, come we will revise. Very good.
Okay, so there was benefit in my delay. No wonder everyone is like fully like clued up today, you know. I'm thinking, mashallah, you know, they're all like, they got answers, they've got like, you know. Okay,
No,
so
we don't have questions. We are not cheaters.
okay, so give me 3 benefits of being a shepherd.
Patient.
Near the nature,
Being close to creation and
more far-sighted.
somebody else said something here.
Patience.
Yeah, farsightedness.
So they need to be
Yeah. Responsibility.
Far-sightedness,
Yeah, very good. Yes. Yeah. And
Dedication.
simplicity, right? So you get used to very simple things, and you're happy with simple things. You don't want anything fancy, you know. You're happy with this. I mean, if you think about it, all his life, the Prophet ﷺ, he slept on the floor. And once, you know, one of the women of Ansar, you know, she came and she said, you know, what is this folded up abaya on the floor? And they said, this is the bed of the Prophet ﷺ. And she said, what? She said, you know, he's our messenger. He sleeps on this. It's like literally like a folded abaya, you know. So she went back, she got some wool and some cloth and everything, and she made a really nice like bed for him, what, you know, if you could call it a bed. And she took it and she presented it to Aisha radiallahu anha, and she said, when he comes, please tell him to sleep on this. He came back, he said, what is this? So she said that, you know, one of the women of the Ansar, she has left this for you. He said, give it back. So Aisha radiallahu anha, being Aisha radiallahu anha, she said, okay, she said, I'll use it in the house, you know, I'll put it on the side, we'll sit on it, you know, we'll do something with it. He said, no. He said, give it back to her. He said, I don't want this in my house. Please give it back to her. So it was returned. And, you know, throughout his life, this is how he slept. And, you know, if you think about it, this is the most beloved person to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the person who will be closest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the akhirah. He is the only one who will see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala all the time. He has all of these, you know, amazing benefits. But what did he get in the dunya? So this is something for us to think about, that the dunya is something that Allah gives to those whom He loves and those whom He does not love. You see many people who Allah, who are disobeying Allah, who are arrogant towards Allah, who hate Islam, who hate Allah. And Allah has given them. He has given them multiples and multiples of what any of us could ever have. So Allah gives dunya possessions to those whom He loves and to those whom He does not love. But the deen, He only gives to the person that He loves. And so if Allah has blessed you with some knowledge of the deen or some love for the deen, then thank Him. Because this is something very, very special. And this is not something that is given out to everyone. This is only the chosen few that Allah gives it to. Okay, so Alhamdulillah, you know, you guys have revised, so we can move on swiftly. We're not going to sit and discuss this too much. Okay, why did Khadija radiallahu anha decide to marry the Prophet ﷺ? Because, you know, Khadija radiallahu anha, she was an eligible bachelorette, and lots of people wanted to marry her. She was beautiful, she was rich, she was a businesswoman. Why did she decide to marry the Prophet
They
ﷺ?
went on a travel business. Maisara was the
Yes,
person
Maisara
who
was-
Maisara?
Yes.
He was accompanying. He saw the honesty,
Yes.
the ihsan,
Yes.
the trustworthiness.
Yes.
He comes and tells her that.
Yes.
So through Nafisa,
Yes.
the proposal was sent.
Yes,
And
very
then
good. So one of the main reasons was that he noticed that
good output of the
everything that he buys, because she had used other people in the past and they had just bought any kind of goods and given them to her, and she had suffered some losses. But he said that this particular man, you know, he was selecting things as if he's selecting them for himself, and that is what ihsan is, and that is how we should behave. So whether we're dealing with ourselves or with somebody else, we should be honest and sincere and genuine in what we do, right? So okay, so you should all be making notes or copying notes from Rabina.
When we complete, she'll have the whole book and publish it.
Maybe she can run another circle. Okay. Now, he married Khadija when he was how old? He was 25 and she was 40. When did he marry the second wife?
53 years. When
Yes,
Johnson was
yes,
after
that's
her
right.
death.
After her death. So for that many years, he only had one wife, which, smashes the arguments that they have about, him being fond of women and, enjoying women. Because if he was that kind of person, he's not going to wait till he's past his 50s, right? He will enjoy women in his 20s and his 30s. Why would he marry, either she was widowed or divorced? Why would he marry somebody who's already, been married previously? So obviously this is not the reason he was marrying the other women that he married. So, there were other reasons. We'll talk about that later, inshallah. Why do people keep setting alarms on the iPad? Okay, so going back to our current dars then. So last time we finished talking about the conversion story of Hamza radiallahu anhu and of Umar radiallahu anhu, and we talked about the lessons to learn from the Islam of Umar radiallahu anhu, okay? The next topic is very important, and it's about the boycott, like I had mentioned to you last time. And what happens is that the Quraysh noticed that a group of Muslims have moved to Abyssinia, and they've made a base there, and they're really happy and comfortable with their Islam. They're able to practice their Islam because they tried to send people to pull them out of Abyssinia, and they failed in that. So now they have one group living there comfortably practicing their deen. And then they notice that people like Umar radiallahu anhu and Hamza radiallahu anhu are becoming Muslim. Now this is really, really bad news for them, because some of their strong people are, going onto the other side. For what is for them the dark side, right? So they're thinking that, look, this is not good for us. Now they decide that, you know what? We've had enough of hesitation. It's time to kill Muhammad. We can't have this anymore. We can't, because this deen is getting stronger and it's getting its roots in, and this situation is going to get more serious. So they go to the Banu Hashim and they say, hand over Muhammad to us. That's all we want. And obviously Banu Hashim says no. They say, we're not going to hand Muhammad over to you. They say, all right. They decide to sign an embargo against the tribe of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the tribe of Banu Muttalib. Okay, so these two tribes, they write down the rules that they are going to implement, and they kick off this embargo. And what are the rules? You can't trade with them. You can't do there should not be any social interaction. There should not be any political interaction, any economical interaction, no marriages in between, no exchange of food, no trade, nothing. It's like a complete cutoff, okay? Which is what you call a boycott, right? No communication. So they are confined to this valley, and they surround the valley to make sure that no one from this clan comes out and no one from here goes in. They want to make sure that this is going to be like a tight, embargo. I mean, when I was... Yes, they surrounded the valley. When I was preparing this, I was thinking of the current situation of, for example, like Palestine and these people. This is what they've done. It's like a large open-air prison, where you put people in a certain place under the sky, and you surround it, and you say, that's it. You're not going out, and no one's coming in. It's like... I think there were houses, but very, very simple. But there was nothing much there. The
valley which belonged to Abu Talib.
Yes, maybe, obviously this thing lasted for about 2 or 3 years, and after a while, obviously, they went in with some of their belongings, but things ran out. So it is reported that the Sahaba, they would come out, they would just grab leaves from trees and just eat them. And it's during this time, that the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba, they would tie stones to their stomach to relieve the sense of hunger. I mean, this is why I keep saying, that this is the most beloved person to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he got the least of the dunya, but he got the most of the akhirah. And that's why some of the Sahaba, when they would get too much in the dunya, they would start getting worried, because they thought maybe we've got what we deserved here, and our reward from the akhirah has become decreased, Whereas us, we sometimes consider this as a sign of Allah's pleasure with us, that how much have we got, how well can we eat, how well do we dress. I mean, of course, alhamdulillah, it's very kind of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He looks after us and that we are safe. But I'm just saying that it's not necessarily a sign of Allah's love for you, because there are people whom Allah loves, far more, and they have struggled far, far more than anyone else. And it is reported that, you could hear screams of children and women from this valley going all the way, into the city, into where the Quraysh were living, and they could hear these screams. They were either out of hunger, people died during this time. It was a very, very, very tough time. And it seems that this time was very, very tough on Abu Talib and on Khadija radiallahu anha. They were both soft-hearted people, and I think that this affected them very.
Khadija's business then? Gone.
Everything stopped, yeah. Whoever wanted to be on the side of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is just cut off.
But even the non-Muslims are better.
Yes. So that's the interesting thing, that the people who are in this valley, they're not all Muslim. A small handful of them are Muslim. The rest of them are non-Muslim. The whole tribe of Banu Hashim and Banu al-Muttalib were not Muslim. They were non-Muslim, but because they were supporting this one member of their family, and they said, we will not hand him over to you to kill him. This is why they're going through this, and they had to stick together. This is what tribalism was about at that time. That's why belonging to a big tribe or a strong tribe, it meant something, because it meant you had protection, you had security, you had support. And if you came from a small tribe, it meant you had less support. So even today, remember I told you about blood money? These people, they say we just give 50 riyals towards some huge amount, because they are such huge tribes, but they all have to contribute, they all have to support. Even if one person makes a mistake, they all have to try and support him. Okay, so turn this around, I need to get glasses. So yes, anyway, like I was telling you that we will come to that later on, but this event, it really, really affected Khadija radiallahu anha and Abu Talib. And, they would see women suffering, children suffering, people starving. They saw all these things with their eyes, and it had a very, very strong impact on their health. And they did not live very long after the boycott was lifted. So anyway, now, what happened was that there was a man called Hisham bin Harith, and he was related to Banu Hashim through his mother's side. So there was a man called Hisham bin Harith, and he was related to Banu Hashim from his maternal side. So he did not belong to the clan of Banu Hashim, but through his mother's side he was related to them. So he used to feel very sad and upset to see them suffering like this. I mean, like I said, their screams could be heard, all the way. And what he would do is, he would, you see, all of them did not accept this embargo, but they just kept quiet. So he was one of the people who was very enthusiastic in refuting and refusing to accept this embargo. But you see, against the strong leaders of the Quraysh, they didn't have much of a say, so they had to just keep quiet. Inside their hearts, they were not happy with it, but they just kept quiet. Just like today, some things happen that the government of our country decides. We're not happy with it, but we just shut up and get on with it, because we're not the decision makers. So, he would load a camel with food, and he would take it to the top of the hill that was overlooking that valley, and then he would set that camel free, so it would go down the hill. I mean, if you stop the camel in such a way, when you release him, that's the only direction he's going to go. And he would end up amongst the Banu Hashim with the food supplies and everything that he had sent.
What was his name?
Hashim bin Harith. Hisham bin Harith. Yeah, Hisham bin Harith. Okay. So he did that for a while, but obviously, I mean, you can imagine, one camel load for 2 clans, that's obviously not enough food. So there was just some food that would maybe help them. Now, one day he went to somebody called Zuhair bin Abi Umayyah, and he said to Zuhair, Zuhair, does it please you that you are eating well and dressing well while your own uncles are in a situation of distress? Zuhair was also related to Banu Hashim through his mother. But because they were not related through their father's side, they belonged to a different tribe and they had a different family name. They were not from Banu Hashim. But they had links to Banu Hashim because of their mother. So he went and he asked him this. And he said, on my part, I swear that if these people were the uncles of Abul Hakam, meaning Abu Jahl, he would not have done so. Because you see, the ringleader in all these things was usually Abu Jahl. He was the mastermind behind most of these plots and, difficulties that they were trying to impose on the Muslims. So this was Abu Jahl's, you could say it was his idea. And they had just, the Quraysh had just met up and agreed with him. But here, Hisham is saying that if these were my uncles, I would not like this. And he's saying that if these were Abu Jahl's uncles, he would never have done this to them. But because these are not his relatives, he's doing this. Because for him, he feels these are my relatives, connected through his mother's side. So, Zuhair ibn Abi Umayyah responded and said, shame on you, Hisham. Who am I but one man? In the name of Allah, if I had another person beside me, I would go about abrogating that document. So Hisham said, well, there is a person with you. Zuhair said, who is it? He said, myself. Zuhair said, then find us a third person. So Hisham set off to find another person. Okay. And he went to a man called Al-Mut'am bin Uday. And he said, Mut'am, are you pleased to have 2 clans of Banu Abdul Manaf suffer while you look on in agreement with Quraysh about it? By God, if you enable them to do this, they will soon be treating you the same way. So he's basically saying that today they're doing this to somebody else's clan and we're quiet. Tomorrow, what if they turn around and say, okay, we want to now do this to your clan for some reason? Because they're saying that if you allow them to do this, today it's them, tomorrow it could be us. And I remember, when we were discussing, a long time ago about the extradition treaty in the UK, this is the main slogan that people were saying. They were saying, today it's such and such, tomorrow it could be us. If we're being extradited, no one's going to say anything. Because when there is an unreasonable or an unfair law in place, you need to get rid of it, not just for the sake of the person who's stuck in it, but for future. Because anybody can get caught in that. So this is what he's saying. He's saying that today it's their clan, tomorrow it could be our clan, and they can make an embargo and stick it on the wall and say, okay, this whole family has to go and live there now. So then what are we going to do? So they're saying that let's abolish this. So
Who was the third person?
Al-Mut'am bin Uday. Okay. So Al-Mut'am said, well, what am I able to do? I am just one person. So Hisham said, there is one person with you. He asked, who is that? Hisham said, myself. So Al-Mut'am said, how about you find us a third person? So Hisham said, I did. Al-Mut'am asked who that was. Hisham said, Zuhair bin Abu Umayyah. So Al-Mut'am said, find us a fourth. So now Hisham is on this, on this mission to gather enough people. Now you see, you have to start learning from these stories that to make a change, somebody has to get up and use his hands and legs. Change is not just going to drop in our laps, right? You have to get up and do something about it. And usually these things start small and then they have a big impact. Okay. So Hisham went to Abul Bukhtari, and he said the same thing to him, and Abul Bukhtari said, we need more people. And Hisham said, we are now 4. Abul Bukhtari said, go and find us a 5th. Yeah. So Hisham went and got a 5th person, who was Zam'a bil Aswad. Okay. And they all met up in Al-Hujun, which was a place where they had a secret meeting. And they all agreed that the next morning they would go and destroy this document, but they would make it look like it was not planned. They have just suddenly all come together and disagreed on this embargo. Okay? So they planned it, but they said, we will make it look spontaneous. So the next following morning, Zuhair bin Abi Umayyah, he wore some special clothes and he went and made tawaf around the Kaaba. And after he made tawaf around the Kaaba, he went and he stood near the assembly of the Quraysh, which was called a Nadwa, and this Nadwa would take place near the Kaaba. So he completed his tawaf, and very casually went and stood near the assembly of the Quraysh. And he stood there and he said, O people of Quraysh, does it please you to eat well and to dress at will, while Banu Hashim and Banu al-Muttalib are going through distress? I swear in the name of Allah, I am not going to take a seat unless that document is torn apart. Now a second person from one of these 5 stands up and he says, he says, yes, I never agreed to that document from the day it was written. Then a third person stood up and he said, yes, I never want anything to do with such a document, and I don't want to be part of such an agreement. And then the 4th person stood up and spoke, and the 5th person against this embargo. And finally, Hisham bin Harith stood up and he spoke out against it as well. Now it all looks like this has all suddenly happened, right, to most of us average people. But Abu Jahl, very, very smart person. The only thing he wasn't smart in was in recognizing where his success is and where his failure is, and in, accepting Islam. But otherwise, he was a very intelligent person, which is why the Prophet ﷺ made dua for him to become Muslim, because he would be an asset to Islam. But he used his strength against Islam, which is where his downfall was. So he stood up and he said, this is something that you planned at night. He said, this is not something spontaneous. Don't think I'm stupid that all of a sudden, 5 people have decided to stand up and speak out against this. He said, this is something you've planned. But it was too late. By the time he spoke, they had already rushed into the Kaaba, because this piece of paper, this document, it had been stuck inside the wall of the Kaaba. So by the time he spoke, they had already gone to take it off. And when they went, subhanallah, this is a miracle from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that it had been eaten up by termites, except for the part which said, Bismik Allahum. Just those 2 words, Bismik Allahum. Those were the only 2 words that had not been eaten up. And the entire document had been eaten by termites. So it was non-existent before they could even take it off the wall. It was already finished. And it was then that this embargo was lifted and everybody came back to, living their normal life.
So when they were having this embargo, how they were away from the Kaaba all this time?
Yes, yes.
Like a couple of years they're away from the
Yes,
Kaaba?
yes. They were confined to this little area where they could not come out of. And so, they could not come near the Kaaba.
And what about these 2 powerful men, Hamza?
Yeah, they were all in that, together in that boycott, because the agreement was either you hand over Muhammad or you guys stay here. So they said, okay, we'll stay here, but we're not handing him over. So this is why they had to, and like I've told you many times, that they would keep their word. If they gave their word on something, they would keep it. So they knew that, it's either this or that. So they had to go ahead.
Lasted for 2 years.
2 or 3. Yeah, Allahu Alam, it's about that much. Okay, now there are a couple of lessons that we learn from this. One thing that we see over here is that 5 people made a difference. So it doesn't have to be a very large group. It just has to be somebody who's determined to make a change, and it should be organized. So these people didn't just haphazardly go and, they didn't say, get emotional and say, okay, I'm going to go now and break down Abu Jahl's door. And they didn't do something like that. They discussed, they organized, they decided what to do, and then they carried out their plan, right? So it was a small number of people, but it was organized. And also, you see in this that you need to take the first step if you want to make a change in anything. The word used for a prophet is Nabi. And that is, when the Prophet ﷺ received the words Iqra, he was a Nabi. When he received the words Qum fa'anzir, then he was a Rasul. Because until he was a Nabi, he was not asked to go and propagate the message or to warn anyone. But when he was asked to do that, that's when you're now doing the work of a Rasul. So there's a difference in just gaining knowledge and in getting up and doing something with that knowledge. And like I said, you have to get up and take the first step, because the change is not going to come unless you do that. The second thing that you see in the story is the miracle of the termites eating the document. And, nobody knows وَمَا يَعْلَمُ جُنُودَ رَبِّهِ, right? So nobody knows the soldiers of Allah. I mean, who would think that termites are going to do the job that Allah wants them to do? They're termites. But you don't know who is the soldier of Allah. And, just to mention a few other miracles of the Prophet ﷺ. There was I mentioned this to you last time about a wrestler, right? So his name was Rukana. Okay. So his name was Rukana, and he was well known, to defeat people in wrestling matches. And he went to the Prophet ﷺ one day and he said, "Would you challenge me?" And the Prophet ﷺ accepted the challenge. And he was doing it to humiliate the Prophet ﷺ, because he knew how tough he was. And like I said, the Prophet ﷺ was medium built. But the Prophet ﷺ had the strength of 30 men, right? We mentioned that last time. Even as a child, they say that when he reached the age of 2, they said he was a sturdy child. And you see this with a lot of the Anbiya. And this has to do with your strength of your Iman. I mentioned this last time, right? The stronger your Iman, the stronger you are physically. The story of Musa alayhi salam when he helps those 2 women with the water. It is said that the other people who used to come to get the water from the well, they had 2 camels, and they would tie the ropes onto these 2 camels, and then they would tie those ropes onto the bucket. So they would throw the bucket down, and then they would make the camels walk forward to pull that bucket up, because it was a very, very deep well. When they had all gone, Musa alayhi salam came, he threw the bucket in, he pulled it out, and he gave the water to the women. That's why they went to their father and they said, he's qawiyun aziz. They described him as being very strong, because he had just done the work of 2 camels. And these women are standing and thinking, is this a man? Is this a human being? I mean, those other people, they're also strong, but they couldn't pull the water out. They needed those 2 camels to pull the bucket out. And Musa alayhi salam, he just puts the bucket in and he pulls it out and he gives them the water. So that's why they went and they said to their father, that this guy, he's really strong. So you see, this strength, it's not just about physical strength. You see, we depend too much on what we see and what we understand, but we don't understand everything and we don't see everything. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has His own way of doing things. He has His own way of making things run, and we don't always see everything. So the Prophet ﷺ, he agrees to this challenge, and the deal was that whoever wins will get 100 sheep. So the wrestling match started, and the Prophet ﷺ took Rukana and he turned him upside down and he threw him on the floor. And Rukana is like shocked, because no one's ever done that to him. And he stood up and he did it a second time. Then he stood up again, and the Prophet ﷺ took him a third time and he threw him. And Rukana said to the Prophet ﷺ, no one has ever caused my back to touch that floor. And so, the Prophet ﷺ won the 100 sheep. And Rukana said to the Prophet ﷺ, Muhammad, no one has ever put my back on the ground before you, and no one was more hateful in my sight before this than you, but now I testify that there is no God but Allah, and that you are the messenger of Allah. I mean, there's nothing else left to say, right? This has to be a messenger of Allah. I mean, no ordinary man would be able to do this. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he gave back the 100 sheep to Rukana. Because this was not his purpose. Rukana's purpose was to humiliate the Prophet ﷺ, but his purpose was just to, accept the challenge and, carry on. The second miracle that I wanted to mention to you is the Quraysh, they kept requesting the Prophet ﷺ for a miracle. They said, the messengers in the past, they got a miracle. You gave us a miracle. I mean, they had the Quran. That was the biggest miracle. And they could not understand how it was so amazing and so poetic, but still they wanted another miracle. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gave the Prophet ﷺ the miracle of splitting the moon. And the Prophet ﷺ, he gathered them in a certain place at a certain time, and he split the moon. And everybody saw it happen. And what's that? Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, he said, we were alone with Allah's messenger in Mina. The moon was split into two. One part was behind the mountain, and the other one was on this side of the mountain. And Allah's messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to us, bear witness to this. And when the Prophet ﷺ did this, on their request, what did they say? Yeah, they said this is just magic. They said this is an optical illusion, and he just cast some magic on our eyes, and we think that the moon has been split. They were never satisfied. You see, these people, they were not really looking for the answers. They were just trying to catch him out. So they thought, okay, maybe if we say this, then he's going to back off. But every time he brought them whatever they wanted. So we will talk about this splitting of the moon and one more miracle next time, inshallah. So we'll stop here. Wa subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.
وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.